So here's our economic update for August 8th, 2026. We have our jobs numbers. On August 5th, we got our independent ADP numbers that came in at positive 44,000 jobs in July. On August 7th, we had government numbers from the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. They said we lost 23,000 jobs in July. They further revised down the prior month's numbers. We're now at plus 20,000 jobs in June. This has been revised down by 37,000 jobs. And our May numbers have been revised down further now to positive 63,000 jobs, but this has been revised down by 66,000 jobs. So that means we have 126,000 less jobs than we had last month. And somehow our unemployment is at 4.1%. It came down by 0.1%. So if you see the headline numbers saying that, hey, look, our unemployment number went down, let's dive into that a little bit deeper because we actually had a significant loss of jobs. Where this comes into play is less people are participating in the labor force. The labor force participation rate is actually down, so less people are actually working or looking for jobs, let's say. Now, if you look at our unemployment numbers, we're saying that there's 6.9 million people that are unemployed. Well, what does it mean to be unemployed? It means that someone doesn't have a job, wants a job, is able to work, and has applied for a job or looked for a job in the last 4 weeks. However, there's an additional 5.9 million people that have not looked for a job in the last 4 weeks. So if you add those two numbers up, for people that want jobs but don't have jobs, that's 7.6% if you wanted to consider that unemployed or call it something else. They want a job, they don't have a job. Now, there's an additional 4.8 million people that work part-time for economic reasons. They haven't been able to find full-time work. So put all those numbers together, you're at 17.6 million people that want full-time work that can't find it at the moment. And if you think about that, that's 10.5% of the labor force that's looking for a job. And if you look at long-term unemployment, for everybody that's on unemployment, 25.5% of those people have been unemployed for at least 6 months. This number came down slightly from about 27%. Good news is we're not seeing an uptick in the average like last 5 weeks of newly unemployed, so that's not the reason for this. On August 4th, we had our JOLTS report. There are 7.4 million open jobs available. There were 5.3 million people hired last month, and there's 5.4 million separations, of which 1.8 million were layoffs or basically discharges, fires, those types of things. And about 3.2 million were roughly just people leaving. So how are the inflation numbers? We have 3 different ways to look at this. We have our producer price index. This is what the people pay that are making the products that you buy or services. The consumer price index, this is the price basically that's on the shelf. And your personal consumption expenditure, this is after you buy it off the shelf, how much did you actually spend? So on July 15th, our PPI was at 5.5%. This is high. However, it is coming down. Our PPI core, this is minus food and energy, it was still going up. It's 5.1%. On July 14th, we got our consumer price index, or CPI, of 3.5%. This is coming down. And our CPI core is at 2.6%. That's excluding, again, food and energy. And right now with the Iran-US conflict going on, fuel prices have been going up. So I do expect these to go up, at least for these in the coming months. On July 30th, we got our personal consumption expenditures, our PCE, is at 3.7%, declining slightly. Our personal consumption expenditures core minus food and energy were 3.3%, coming down. So hopefully these continue to go down. However, with the conflict still going on, I do expect these to go back up. The Fed has a couple of mandates. They generally only mention the first 2 because if you handle the first 2, the third one takes care of itself. So the first one is maintain stable prices. They prefer to look at PCE core. They want this to be at 2%. Number 2, they want maximum employment. So you want to see your unemployment number coming down. You don't want to see it going up. So if inflation is coming down and unemployment is going down, you're in a pretty good spot. However, if inflation goes up, then you're going to want to raise interest rates. And if the unemployment number goes up, effectively you want to drop interest rates, try to spur spending, that sort of thing, or you want to inject liquidity or money into the market to get people to buy stuff. Number three, they want to have moderate long-term interest rates. What's that mean? You don't want to have, say, government debt that's, approaching 40 trillion sometime in the near future, to be at a very high interest rate, because it'll be very hard to at least service that debt. Also, if you want to buy a car, you want to buy a house or anything like that, if you had a 20% interest rate on your house, it would be very difficult, even more so than it is today, to buy a house. And if you had such a high interest rate, pretty much all the housing prices would have to go down to some degree, because nobody would be able to buy a house. Speaking of the Fed, they had their Federal Open Market Committee meeting on July 29th, and they voted to keep interest rates at 3.5 to 3.75% for the overnight rates. They want to maintain ample reserves. They're buying up basically up to 3-year bonds or Treasury bills from the Treasury. There was a 9-3 vote. 3 people said that they want to increase interest rates. They are likely going to increase interest rates at the next meeting in the next month or so. Inflation remains elevated. Capital investment and productivity remain strong. Unemployment is fairly steady. Economic activity has expanded. Uncertainty with the Middle East conflict is leading to energy prices on the rise. For our gross domestic product, if we look first quarter 2026, we're at positive 2.1%. That's good. Second quarter, we came in a little lower at 1.5%, but still positive. Third quarter, this number is basically ridiculously high. It's at 5.8%. We'll keep an eye on that and see where that ends up over the next couple of months, because we didn't even get through third quarter yet. So who knows what will happen in the future. For our leading economic index, we got this on July 20th. The LEI declined 0.2% month over month, so that's not good looking forward. But if we look over the last 6 months, we're still negative, but it's stable. It's not signaling any type of recession at the moment. It's negative mostly because of consumer expectations and reduced building permits. Coincident economic indicator, this is basically, are we in a recession now? This is still growing. It's going up by 0.2% month over month. They did cite that consumer spending is weakening. There is still spending in business, and AI spending is up. Consumer expectations came out on August 7th. Basically, there's a higher expected unemployment rate, slightly higher risk of losing a job. However, the probability of finding a job if someone lost a job is also higher. Inflation is expected to go down a little bit now to 3.6% in 1 year, 3.3% at 3 years, and 3.0% at 5 years. Household finances are expected to improve over the next 12 months. Manufacturing data came out on August 3rd from ISM. Overall economy is growing faster. This is the 21st month of growth. Manufacturing is growing faster. This is the 7th month. And employment, this is the first month employment has actually grown in this sector, so that's good. And the other good sign here is export orders are growing for the first month. Prices are increasing, but they're increasing at a slower rate, so it's good that it's slowing down, but it's the 22nd month of price increases. Services, on August 5th, ISM came out. Service sector is growing faster. It's now the 25th month of growth. However, employment is contracting. This is the first month that it's actually went down. Imports are growing, so that's somewhat of a good sign, but a better sign is new export orders are growing faster, and that's the second month that that's been growing. A couple of things that I'm watching out for right now. One is what's going on with the US dollar as well as the Japanese yen. There's something called the yen carry trade, and basically Japan's trying to pull a lot of money back to its country, and they're trying to stabilize their currency. Now, in doing so, the Japanese businesses, government, things like that, they hold the most US national debt out of anyone in the world. They hold over $1 trillion of our debt, as well as a lot of money is invested in the US stock market. So if they pull out billions and hundreds of billions of dollars, what typically happens is the US stock market takes a dive just because it's a massive outflow of cash. So I'm trying to keep an eye on that. The other one is the ongoing Iran-US conflict in the Middle East, as well as there's some proxy groups that are getting pulled in and blocking other shipping lanes. So there's Strait of Hormuz next to Iran, and then there's another strait which is near the Red Sea with near Yemen, and basically Houthis will go in and attack ships. That reduces the world's oil supply and also shipping routes. So where this comes into play is the price of fuel, which is going to drive up our inflation, because if you want something to go from A to B, you have to ship it, or you need fuel to move it on a truck or something like that as well. It'll have less impact on core, but eventually it'll still show up there. The main point is you're going to immediately see it in these numbers. The United States, as well as other countries, have strategic oil reserves, or we have a strategic petroleum reserve, and we're now at about 305 million barrels. This is the lowest it's been in about 45 years. 1983 is the last time we got down even close to this. The other thing to note here is the US stock market is a bit high if you look at price to earnings ratios. Anything above 25 is getting pretty risky. Right now, there was a bubble that popped in South Korea, and they lost about 30% of the stock market in terms of value. And if you look at the Buffett indicator or the Shiller indicators or things like that, there's just an increased risk at the moment. I'm not saying that the stock market's going down today or this week or this month or even in a couple of months. I'm just saying I'm keeping an eye on that. And I'll talk about what I do with my money at the moment. The issue with South Korea is effectively half of its stock market was made up by two companies. So when those two companies went down, it took everything with it. In the US, we do have a concentration in tech. However, it's not two companies, it's more like 10 plus companies to make up half of the stock market. So it's a little bit less concentrated. Do look at margin, debt, leverage. The more debt people have, the more margin that's there. There's more risk that somebody could have a margin call. If they have a margin call, one of the things that happens is they are forced to sell at any price to sell effectively. So then it sells at a loss, which then drops the price of those shares. And then that causes other people to get margin called, and then those get sold, and then that causes other people to get margin called. And it's like a house of cards. It just goes down really quick. Why is it when we get bad news, sometimes the stock market goes up? And part of that goes back to the Fed. So remember I was talking about people are starting to say we should increase interest rates. So if the Fed increases interest rates, that makes it harder for companies to borrow. It also makes it more attractive to people to take less risk by having like a high yield savings or CDs or bonds or things like that that may be guaranteed by the federal government. And if you look at the stock market over the last 30 years, it's averaged approximately 10 to 11% year over year. However, some years it loses 30 to 50%, and other years it's up 30%. If I was in retirement or I have a lot of money and I'm trying to not lose money, why would I take the additional risk if I could already get 8 or something percent in a CD or a bond or something that's at least backed by the US government? People tend to move money out of stocks at that point, and then stocks don't fare too well in that period of time. So let's go back to the bad news. So if I show that I have a job loss of 126,000 jobs over the last 3 months that I thought I had that I don't have now, then I might not want to raise interest rates. And if I don't raise interest rates, that's good for the stock market, because if I drop interest rates, that helps stocks because investors don't want to put their money somewhere where they don't earn interest. And then borrowing is a lot easier for companies if they don't have to pay as much in interest payments. Well, what am I doing with all this information? Well, first and foremost, I want to make sure I'm out of debt. So I don't have any credit card debt or any consumer debt, no high interest loans or anything like that. The only loan that I have is, say, a 30-year fixed rate, low interest mortgage. That's it. So I like to have a 6+ month emergency fund. The reason for that is because about a quarter of people that have lost their jobs and are currently unemployed have been so for at least 6 months. And I put that into FDIC, CDs, and high yield savings. Currently, I'm getting around 4% in those. Any money that I need in less than 5 years, something that I don't really have time to recover if the market takes a drop, say I need a new roof or a water heater or I need a car or whatever that might be, I'm also putting that money into FDIC, CDs, high yield savings. Number three, this is really where investment comes in. So the money I don't need for at least 5 years, and this is because markets can fluctuate and go up and down, but over long periods of time, they tend to go up. Like I said, the S&P 500 averaged 10 to 11% the last 30 years. I use dollar cost averaging, so each time I get paid, I put in 70 to 80% into the S&P 500, about 10 to 20% into the total international stock funds, and 0 to 10% into bonds. Do realize that bond values are inversely related to interest rates. If interest rates go up, bond value goes down. If interest rates go down, bond value goes up. So if I think interest rates might go up, then I kind of stop buying bonds. I do hold about 9% bonds at the moment, but I'm not currently buying more. If it looks like interest rates are going to start to drop, I'm going to stock up on more bonds, because then those long-term bonds become more valuable in a very short period of time. I also hold a lot of metals, so I have gold and silver, aluminum, copper. I make in body armor, steel plate, things like that. About $200,000 there. I don't really consider that in my investments, but I do hold a lot of metals and precious metals as well. I am an entrepreneur, so I have a lot of different businesses that I've started. I have a commercial farm, YouTube. I do things for Amazon, Google, things like that. Farm stand, random things. So anytime I get new ideas, if it looks like they have asymmetric risk where the reward is much greater than the effort and the money that I put into them, I take that risk and see where it goes. If you ever want to see how to do that, there's a lot of videos on how to start businesses making, $50,000, $100,000 a year with less than $1,000 input, and how somebody could actually do that. And I always try to limit my risk, so that's why I don't put a ton of money up front. Give it a try, see how it goes, and because I have less risk and I'm still doing other things, I have other sources of income, so it's not all the stress on one thing, so if it fails, I'm screwed. So you never want to risk financial ruin, because then you'll never take a risk again. And, half of all businesses fail, so keep that in mind. Don't put everything into one business. Learn from each one as you go, and then that'll get you further ahead on the next one. Well, thank you for watching. Please subscribe. I cover a lot of financial topics, such as how to make more money, how to save, how to invest, and how to be an entrepreneur while limiting your risk. Well, thank you for watching. Please subscribe and have a great day.